Happy International Print Day. A great day to celebrate print in all its forms. And what better day than to visit the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, Massachusetts. It's spelled Haverhill, but pronounced Haverhill. Everybody say Haverhill. You're now official Haverhillites. Handset type was contained in two cases. The upper case for your big letters, the lower case for your small letters. That's where the terminology comes from. You picked out the letters one at a time and assembled them in a composing stick, which you held in your hand. You were working upside down and backwards, so you had to watch your P's and Q's. The first thing you see when you enter the museum is the second prototype of the linotype machine. This is a device invented by Ottmar Mergenthaler, and it's one of the devices that changed the printing industry forever. This is a Colombian press from 1813. It's been restored, but we use it every day to print on. It's an amazing device and typical of how they decorated them in the 1800s. These are called platen presses. They have foot pedals, and as a result, you only needed one operator. However, the image area that you were printing was much smaller than a hand press. These are called hand presses. Gutenberg's press was all wood. Ben Franklin's press was wood with some metal parts. And after 1820, most presses are all metal. These presses required two operators. This is the version of the linotype that most people would recognize. This particular version was built in 1950. Newspapers like the New York Times would have 100 of these. In the magazine above are little brass matrices, and as they were keyboarded on a keyboard, they would fall down and assemble into a line. That line of type then would be sent to a casting mechanism where there is molten metal at 550 degrees. And out would come a slug. The slugs would be assembled into columns. The columns would be assembled into pages. And that's how newspapers set their type. The matrices would then be returned to the magazine, and you would start for the next line, etc. An amazing device invented by Ottmar Mergenthaler. This is a lockup. As you can see, all of the type that was set with the linotype, columns, wide areas for advertising, all of that was set on the linotype, whereas ads were done separately. Instead, as big type, it was probably done on a different machine called the Ludlow. Everything was locked up in this frame called a chase. And in this particular case, on this press, which is a early 1880s rotary press, they would have had two of these on the bed of the press, and it would have printed two pages on one side. Then they would let the ink dry, and then they would print the second side, so you'd have a 4-page broadsheet newspaper. The type would be locked up in this frame called a chase, and all of the columns of type, photo engravings would be locked up in page form. From this, they would make a mold called a flang. You can just see the texture of it here. They would pour molten metal into it and create a cylinder. The cylinder is what would go on the press, because you needed the plates to be round so they could handle rolls of paper going through. This particular plate is unique because it says, "Men walk on moon." As offset lithography began to dominate in the industry, using hot metal made no sense because you had to then pull a proof and then photograph it to film. The objective of photo typesetting was to set type directly on film. These machines are film setters. It's the only collection of these machines in the world because no one saved them because you can't do anything with them. This machine here was the first photographic typesetter. The Intertype photosetter was more or less based on a linotype, except that each matrix had a little piece of film in its belly. It was a really dumb idea. Then there was the Monophoto, the ATF-B8. CompuGraphic comes along, Mergenthaler enters the market, and as a result, we now have about 20 suppliers of photo typesetting machines. This is a color scanner from 1960. It's a Hell scanner. You put your original on the drum, it scanned it, and then on the other side, it exposed 4 negatives, yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. With all of its accoutrements, it was about $1 million. As time went on, scanners got smaller and smaller and smaller. Today, in most cases, they're part of your printer and you get them for nothing. In this large area, a number of things are going on. This is an exhibit on the history of the English dictionary. The back wall shows the wood engraving of Anna Hogan. This table shows the evolution of illustration in print. We have over 1,300 leaves from publications from the 15th and 16th century. We have an entire wall dedicated to chromolithography, using lithostones to reproduce color. There's a wall here on wooden type, which we'll cover in a minute. As we move toward the back here, there's another wall of wood engraving. There's a wall of Lance Heide's work. He was the first graphic designer to use Photoshop. There's a small display of the earliest books of punctuation. Here in the center is a copy of the Nuremberg Chronicle. Well, not the complete copy, the rest of it's in a safe, but this was a history of the world published in 1493. It was the first book to mention Gutenberg as the inventor of printing. And then these cabinets here are samples of wood type fonts. We have the largest collection of wood and metal decorative type in the world. Welcome to the Bible room, where we have put together a history of the printed Bible, the most printed publication on earth. There are many rare Bibles here, printed in different cities at different times. There's a replica of a Gutenberg Bible. We have one leaf from every Bible printed in colonial America, including the first Bible, which was done on the first printing press that came to America, went to Harvard, and printed the Eliot Bible, which was in Algonquin. Then we have an entire wall dedicated to the evolution of the English Bible. We have an original copy of the Geneva Bible. We have a replica of the original King James Bible that you can leaf through. And we have an original Baskerville Bible. This is where he designed the typeface that we still use to this day. Beautiful typeface and a beautiful Bible. Typewriters are also part of the graphic arts when you get right down to it. Many typewriters were adapted to print out proportional type, so they could be used as quasi-typesetting machines. We have about 40 rare typewriters here. There are also other office machines, the mimeograph being the most common, the Gestetner, the Ditto, the addressograph, which was used to address mailers of various kinds. And again, a whole panoply of machines that were used in offices in order to reproduce information. We've tried to keep it all in one area here at the Museum of Printing. We have a typewriter that kids can type on. We even have a Lego typewriter, if you wish to give that a shot. Desktop publishing began with this machine, which was the Apple Lisa. It was overpriced and undercapable, and really did not succeed. However, it served as the basis for the Macintosh, which became immensely successful. And of course, there were many other computers that evolved over the years. And desktop publishing was really the major change in the printing industry. Even up here, we have a Next machine. That's the company that Steve Jobs created when he left Apple. Later, Apple bought the company in order to get him back. We even have some of the early laser printers, the first printers to use postscript. This is the Xerox 914, the first plain paper copier. It came with a fire extinguisher because every now and then it would burst into flames. Xerox said that that was a feature. This is lithography, using a stone, lithos for stone, graphy for writing. Anything that you could draw on the stone could be reproduced. This is a little area of paste-up. A paste-up was a board where you set your type on photo paper instead of film and then pasted it up on the board. It was called a mechanical, and then you photographed that to film and then stripped up the film in order to produce what you needed to make a plate, and the plate then went on your press and then printed. This is the last linotype that was ever built, 1981. As photo typesetting was replacing hot metal, and especially the linotype machine, the linotype company tried to speed up and modernize the linotype to make it look more modern, if you will. In any case, it was too late. The industry had changed, photo typesetting was coming in strongly, and the linotype was dying quickly. This is the museum studio, where there are a number of different printing presses that members can use to print their projects. And if you come to the Museum of Printing, make sure you visit our great museum shop, where you can buy posters, small presses, typewriters, prints of all kinds, books that relate to the industry, a whole variety of materials tied to the graphic arts and typography. This library contains 11,000 volumes about the printing industry. Books about books, books about book publishers, books about newspaper publishers, an entire cabinet dedicated to them, by the way. Books about calligraphy, books about the alphabet, the evolution of the alphabet, books about printing unions, books about lithography, letterpress, books about wood engraving, books about intaglio, books about desktop publishing, encyclopedias. We have one of every encyclopedia published in the United States, only one volume, the P volume for printing, of course. A lot of rare books in here, books about the history of printing that were done in the very early days in the 1700s and 1800s. Not only is it a library, but there are also displays of various books, plates, and other materials. The library is completely accessible by researchers. Almost all the books are in a database, so we can find them. They're allowed to copy them, scan them. We just don't let them take them away. So everything has to be done here at the Museum of Printing. It is a gigantic room filled with books. This display covers everything about Ottmar Mergenthaler, his autobiography, books about him, samples of type. This is the edition of the New York Tribune, the first edition that actually was set with a linotype machine. These are some of the publications that were done by the linotype company. In fact, we have a complete set of almost everything they did, including all of their specimen books. Frederick Goudy was an important type designer in the 20th century and designed many typefaces. And here in this display case, we have the original drawings for his last typeface. This is an exhibit of Chinese printing. In these tabletops, we've got them vertically, but they're actually tables, are glyphs for the Chinese language. There are no letters in their language, they are all symbols. And what we have here, you would spin the table around in order to find the glyph that you wanted, and then you would take it out and put it into a tray for printing. And this is actually the small set of their language. It is actually 2 to 3 times as many glyphs as we have in these two tables. This is a wall of small presses. They're called tabletop presses, and they were used to do business cards and small forms. There are also a very nice collection of children's presses. That's how children became interested in the printing industry. They would buy these through Popular Mechanics or other publications. They were very inexpensive, but it taught them how to print. Thank you, everybody, for participating in this whirlwind tour of the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, Massachusetts. We are so happy to be involved in International Print Day. Again, we should appreciate print in all of its forms. It's an important part of our society. We thank everyone who has been involved in creating this wonderful day, and for all of you who have participated. Again, here at the Museum of Printing, we are trying to preserve the past for the future, and we will continue to save not only the technology, but the ephemera and all of the publications involved in print. This is Frank Romano, and we appreciate everything you all do to recognize print as an important part of our society.